I'm happy to be joined once again with Jenna Barold Cleary with the Lloydminster Museum and Archives. And there's another interesting event coming up this Saturday. It's all about the Canada's British home children. And it's a very fascinating bit of Canadian history that I didn't know about, and I don't think a ton of people do know about this part of history. So I'm very excited that there is something going on at the museum. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me again, Abby. It's great to be able to share about the programs going on at the museum.
Of course. Now, can you tell me a little bit about what this session will be and this event, and a little bit about the history that people will learn if they take part in this?
Of course, so I'll start out with the logistics of the event of the program here. So it's happening this coming Saturday, February 11th, from 1 until 3 p.m. It's relatively cheap to join us. It's just $5, and we recommend that people ages 16 and up join us here at the Lloydminster Museum and Archives. And so our instructor for this program is Susan Brazo. And so she is an author, she is a researcher and a former instructor at Lakeland College. And so she has provided this informational presentation in several different locations. And so she's excited to share it here at the museum. She did her master's thesis on this particular subject. So we're very excited to learn more from her. And so essentially what the Canada British Home Child Program was children that were, I suppose, more impoverished were sent over to Canada to families. So they were children that came from orphanages, people that came from workhouses, as well as from families that were unfortunately impoverished. Some families had no choice but to send their children to another country, which happened to be Canada. And so over 100,000 children were sent over here to Canada over the course of nearly 100 years between the 19th and 20th century. And so Susan herself is a descendant of a British home child that came over to Canada. And so she has made it her mission to share the stories of these children. Some stories were perhaps happier. The majority of stories, though, were ones that I think are they need to be shared so that we never forget these stories. Some of them were perhaps a little bit more traumatic. And so it's important that this history is not forgotten within Canada.
Yes, I was about to bring up, some of the stories aren't as bright because the program itself sounds like it's a good opportunity for, these kids to get out of the impoverished neighborhoods or families that they've been a part of, maybe start a better life. But like you mentioned, some of these stories are very dark. And a lot of this is not taught. I definitely wasn't taught this in school. Do you have an understanding of why something like this was not taught, considering, it was not everything, like you said, was super happy. There were some, children who did go through some very traumatic and dark events throughout their lives.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can do my best to answer it the way I can. I know that if you join us here for this presentation, Susan will be able to provide a very thorough information regarding why exactly it's not taught. But my understanding is that when we have these darker stories, children, and as they grow into adults, they're a little bit nervous about sharing these stories because they want to perhaps keep it down so that they don't have to relive traumas, or they just want to move forward with their life. And so I think for many stories, for the Canadian British home children, as well as people with other traumatic histories, they might not want to share it as much. And so what ends up happening is it's not passed down to their children, and it comes to light later. So for Susan, it came to light, I believe, later in her life when she was finally able to take a look at, what is my grandmother's story? And then when she was able to take a look at the documents and learn more about the program itself, that is when her grandmother's story came to light. And I think that's what's happening now. Others are taking a look at the stories of their grandparents, their ancestors, and just learning about it now. And that's probably why it's only come to light so recently.
Yes, and that does definitely make a lot of sense because, some people aren't so comfortable talking about something traumatic that happened, but it's fantastic. We have someone like Susan who is like, I need to share this and I need people to know about what did happen. And when she learns about these traumatic events that happened to her own family, it is important to get that message out there and to let people know about what happened to some of these children growing up back in the day. How can people get involved with this event? How can they come out? You mentioned there was tickets that needed to be purchased. How can they do so if they'd like to join in on this event?
Of course, if they would like to join us at this event, they can give the museum a call. That's 780-874-3720, or they are welcome to register online. We actually have a new link that will take you right to the registration, which is lloydminster.ca/almost-forgotten. And so they can register there. And then from there, if they are interested in researching their own family history, they can reach out to Susan because she is a part of several organizations that study genealogy, that study family history. So if they're looking more for that sort of information, they can always speak to her then.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I know that this is going to be a real learning opportunity for anybody who shows up, and just another little bit of Canadian history that more people should learn about and should know about. So it's fantastic that we have someone like Susan being able to come out, and the Lloydminster Museum and Archives for being able to hold these sort of events to learn more about certain events in Canadian history that we may not know about. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, Abby. And yeah, we are very fortunate to have her speak on Saturday, and we're very fortunate to be able to share, to educate the public on the stories that are lesser known, stories that are almost forgotten.